Hello and welcome to Atheist Reacts 2. My name's Gavin and I've got a head cold. I've got longish hair at the moment and I had a shower and so I've got it up in this little turbany type thing. I think I got two of these from the supermarket or somewhere real cheap, like super cheap. And as a guy with only shortish long hair, a big towel is too much. And so these things are fantastic. I'm wearing 2 hoodies, 3 t-shirts with this one, 2 pairs of tracksuit pants. I've got the heater going down here, so there might be a little bit of background noise. And you can probably hear my voice is a little bit nasally and stuff like that. But I'm still going to do a podcast episode because I'm feeling it and I want to talk about stuff today. So I've decided that as a thing that I'm going to do in each episode is read from a religious book. This one's going to be the Bible again, from my grandfather's 100-year-old Bible. But eventually I'm going to buy other religious books. I'm going to get the Satanic Bible. I'm going to get Dianetics for Scientology. I'm going to get a Quran, all those kind of things, and read from them and see what we can get from them, because this isn't meant to be a show or a podcast or whatever about bashing religion. It's meant to talk about religion and some aspects of religion. Or sorry, it's not even meant to be about religion. It's meant to be about reacting to the world. And within that, some part of it is religion, and there are some good things in religion. So, random page going towards the back of the Bible here. This is St. Luke, Christ's agony in the garden. So we're going to go Luke 22:44. It's the top of the page, so I'm just going to go with it. St. Luke 22:44. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And when he rose up from prayer and was come to his disciples, he found them sleeping for sorrow, and said unto them, Why sleep ye? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. Now, I feel like reading a tiny section of the Bible out of context, we've got no idea what's actually going on here. So it's almost the same as when people take a section of the Bible out of context and then say, this means this, and you can't do anything other than this. So that's what I'm doing here. But I actually kind of like the line, Why sleep ye? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. Now, I think of prayer as being a form of meditation. So you pray to the higher power of life, that you can get through something, or that you can find the positives in something, or that other people will have success or benefit, that kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of cool, in that if you use prayer like meditation and you think of the positives and you think of what you want to achieve in life, you can then get some really positive things, because it's easy for your brain or your mind to go to the negative things. And we can take, out of context, we can take this line, lest ye enter into temptation. What's that line? Idle hands make the devil's work, or something like that. The devil finds work from idle hands. I think that's a great phrase. I don't think there is a physical devil and demon, but if you take the line devil and demon and say that is negativity and bad things, if you're not constantly sort of working and doing stuff, it's very easy to fall into doing bad things that are negative things that can be detrimental. How many people have not had some kind of meaning or purpose in their life and then just turned to drugs and found that drugs they just take drugs, just drink alcohol, just smoke cigarettes, smoke pot, all that kind of stuff. I've somewhat been guilty of that. I've in the past and probably in the future smoked a lot of cannabis, and it can be a thing where that's all you want to do because you get into that mindset. I quite like cannabis for doing activities and doing things as well, like working out and cleaning the house and reading and things like that. So you can then use it for benefits, of course. And some people can be functioning alcoholics where the amount of alcohol they drink is actually beneficial to them. But if you've got nothing to do, you'll then start exploring things that maybe are bad for you. You eat a bit too much food, or you sit on the couch for too long watching TV, all that kind of stuff. So we can take that line and we can manipulate it to be a positive thing. But obviously, without knowing the rest of the passage and stuff, it's very hard to take too much out of it. The next line, or the next section, and while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them, and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? So I'm assuming this is the section where Jesus is crucified. There's a reference up here, the top section, Christ accused before Pilate. So Pontius Pilate, I believe, if my religious knowledge, Christ's crucifixion, So this is the crucifixion of Christ, this section. And so this is the section where Judas forever makes that name Judas a word for betrayal and for betraying people, where Judas said, I'll kiss him, and that's how you'll know that he is the one that you've got to kill. And if you think about it, I believe at the time Christianity and Jesus was a rebel, and not an anarchist, but he was an agitator, someone who was questioning the status quo. He was a rebel. And so I can understand, especially some people that read these passages and stuff, and they say Jesus was trying to change things and improve things, and he had the word of God, and Judas went and betrayed him. And I've unintentionally opened up at a fairly dramatic part of the story where, if you take out the religious aspect, you can think of it as, again, I always think that Jesus himself was actually, it sounds like, especially from a lot of what you read about Jesus, he was actually a pretty all right guy. He wanted to help people and fix things and stuff like that. He had a Messiah complex, and potentially thought that he was the Son of God. Now, maybe that was interpreted later. Maybe people put that on him later. Because I happened to notice just recently on Reddit, somebody said that they only just found out that the Bible was written by people who never met Jesus. So all of this book about Jesus, especially the Jesus sections, the New Testament, was all written apparently hundreds of years, but at least a generation or two after Jesus. So it was that verbal word of mouth. So that's kind of makes sense that this guy who had all these really cool beliefs and theories and stuff would then be interpreted as, he was the Son of God. So that kind of makes sense to me. But anyway, that's the Bible reading for today, which is the religious book reading of today. But what I wanted to talk about in this episode, or this version of the show, podcast, I don't know, number 2, was death. And so Atheist Reacts is not meant to be a show all about reacting to religion. It's meant to be a show reacting to just life in general and what's going on. And so we've just recently had the Queen of England die. I'm in Australia, so she's the Queen of Australia too. The absurdity of that always is just ridiculous. And at the same time, this last week, a friend of mine committed suicide. And so a lot of what I've been thinking about lately has been the juxtaposition of those two things. the Queen, born into the royal family, the Windsors, the mostly German royal family of England. And my friend, born into, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, a fairly middle-class, white, Canadian family. And the Queen lived in relative luxury for most of her 98, I think it was, years. My friend lived in mental health hell for a lot of her years. And when I found out that she had committed suicide, my initial reaction when I saw the first message come through from a mutual contact friend, I don't want to be too specific with certain things, so I'm being vague. But when I saw the first message came in, I said, "Oh no," out loud. I said, "Oh no," because I knew that's what it was. But I haven't cried. I haven't become overly emotional at any point. Oh, I almost got emotional last night when I was writing up a little thing that I wanted to post some feelings. But the main reason is because this friend of mine, I saw her at some really low parts of her life. And I could recognize where she was mentally, not the severity. And I always said to her, she and I had similar things. I could recognize, and I said to her, I can recognize in you my thoughts and my beliefs, but yours are magnified. Yours are 100 times as opposed to my 1 times. And so I tried my best to be very helpful to her. I tried to never tell her she was wrong, just always suggest a different way of thinking about something. Because she was of the opinion at times, and this is the other crazy thing, or crazy is not the right word I should put in there. She would hate it if I'd referred to her as crazy, but by most modern standards, you would deem her as crazy. Now, I believe that crazy is just a mental health issue. Your brain works in a different way to the norm. And so some people are crazy and can make millions of dollars. Hello, Kanye West. Some people can be crazy and conquer the known world. Hello, Alexander the Great, most likely. But in the modern world that my friend lived in, the way her brain worked didn't work well for the world. And I feel the same way about my own brain. I always compare myself, not in a negative way, but in a positive kind of way, to my best friend who is successful, has money, has a job, went to university, has bought a house, has a wife, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I'm renting, barely paying my rent each week, struggling a little bit, no intention to ever have children, pretty low intention of ever having a regular partner for the rest of my life, living an alternative to the norm. And so I think my friend could have lived an alternative life where she was relatively happy. But unfortunately, she was in the white Western world at a time when we're still not quite understanding the way brains work. We're still discovering, we're still learning. And I'm at a stage with her death that, for me, I'm not happy about her being gone, because I genuinely very much looked forward to seeing her again at some point in the future. But I now know she's not suffering. And I feel like she was suffering, because I feel like everything she tried to do to help herself didn't work. She took drugs both in a recreational way to combat the pain, but also in a spiritual, medicinal way to combat the pain. She had tried the pharmaceutical drugs, the medication drugs, and processes She'd tried therapy. She talked. She had a therapist that she spoke to. She'd tried starting a new life and living a new life. And the frustrating thing that I've thought of this is that some illnesses and some conditions are terminal. If somebody had cancer and they died of cancer, you wouldn't say, and not to suggest that anyone is saying this, but you wouldn't say that somebody dying of cancer was selfish or anything like that. But somebody who dies of mental health related issues and kills themselves, we often say, oh, they were selfish because they killed themselves. And it's one of the feelings I had with Anthony Bourdain when he died. Not that I knew much of his story. I'm not a huge Bourdain fan. But I felt that he was clearly suffering and had been for a while. Whatever it was in his life was triggering his suffering to the point where he was like, I can't suffer anymore. I'm just done with the suffering. And that's how I felt. I felt that very strongly at times. For instance, earlier this year, I got suicidal at one point. And I got to the point where I had a knife beside the bed, beside the bath, ready to slit my wrists. And it was right in here. I was thinking, I'm going to slit my wrists. This is going to happen. I was imagining it happening. I'm going to do this. And this somewhat stupid thing about it was that it was because I'd come home and my dog had pissed or pooed on one of my dogs had pissed or pooed on the floor, and I'd gotten angry, and I'd put her outside, or she'd gone outside, and then I couldn't find her. She was hiding from me because of my anger. Now, that dog came back. She slept in the bed with me just this last night, and I play with her, and I have cuddles with her, and she does the cute thing where dogs pull your hand down to play with their chest. The other dog's right here, but she's in there. And we have a great time since. We've had some disagreements where she's done some pee and poo and I've gotten angry again. But I was able to get over that. And those thoughts, if I had that kind of anger and that kind of, so the reason I was desperate and thinking negatively and wanting to kill myself, a small edit because of the lack of professionalism. And I think to myself, if I had that continual anger and desperation, because I thought to myself, I can't look after these dogs and this life where I'm struggling to find enough money to pay my rent and food to eat, and I'm making bad decisions and I'm not cleaning up after myself enough, and the way I'm living isn't positive and all that kind of stuff, to the point where I'm like, just because my dog pissed and pooed on the floorboards, not even carpet or rugs or anything, that's happened as well, but this time it wasn't. My reaction to that was so angry and aggressive that my dog has run away, because she ran away for 2 days one time when it happened, another time when it happened, and I was beside myself because I'm like, I caused this dog to run away and potentially die. Because until I was lucky enough that somebody found her and brought her back, she was going to probably die. Because I'd gotten angry at her because she couldn't get out to pee and poo, so she peed and pooed in the side. And so that's this little cycle that's just stupid. And so the suffering involved, because our brains sometimes don't work right or work positively, right? Working right is the wrong way of doing it, really. But because they work in a way that doesn't necessarily work well, and they think negatively, I understand if you've got that suffering just constantly there, that everything you do has this negative reaction because you can't deal with the pain of, for instance, again, comparing myself to my best mate, he is able to somewhat, not all the time, but somewhat enjoy the hard work that he does, where he sits at a desk and reads over documents and puts together a report. And I'm not going to specify his job, but he does his job, and it's sitting at a desk reading stuff. I couldn't sit at a desk and read and do all that kind of stuff like that. I couldn't do it. But we did something. We did a Tough Mudder thing one time, and I just naturally, with very little effort, was able to get through these challenges and these courses and stuff in a more successful, happier, enjoyable way than he did. I think he suffered through it a little bit, whereas I embraced it and was like, oh my God, I'm wet, I'm muddy, this is awesome. And so we're different. And some people have suffering, and their brains are just suffering. And so as much as I would like it for this friend of mine to be back and living and happy, at least now there's no more suffering for her. And the reaction for this video is that juxtaposition between that and the Queen. The Queen made it to 98 years. Her coronation was the first televised coronation. It was amazing that this coronation had been televised, that the public could see it. She was involved with World War II. I think it was her dad or her uncle or somebody was actually a Nazi sympathizer and went over to the Nazis, if I'm remembering correctly. I can't remember exactly the details, and that's not the point. So she served in the army to a degree, because you're not going to let your royal princess queen go and fight on the front lines, are you? She reigned, whatever that means, over the 20th century, the biggest change in human history, the reduction of the British Empire, where the British reign of the world has been reduced, and in my opinion, hopefully reduced even more when places like Australia become republics soon. Fingers crossed. I don't understand the way people love royalty. They're no better than us. They're just humans. This strange thing where they get money or have money and land for no real reason. You watch, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. And even though Game of Thrones is of course fictional, it's based on or inspired by a lot of actual history and a bunch of English history. And there's parts where one family is in control in this powerful position, and the peasants are just like, oh, who's in charge now? What does it matter? We've got one king who's crazy, one king who's incestual, one king who's doing this one. Who cares? And then it's like, oh, now there's a person coming in to try and become king by ransacking the city. Oh, great. Now we have to deal with that. And there's that thing of, oh, protect us. You've got to protect us because we're your people and stuff. And so it's this weird thing where people are like, we're going to do it for Queen, God, and country. Country, I understand. Fighting for your country, I understand that. I'm not a huge patriot, but I understand that. I would fight for my local area if somebody was coming into, a marauding tribe was coming over the hill to ransack the place. If a world war breaks out and some other entity tries to come to Australia and try and destroy Australia, of course I'm going to fight that. Because this is where I live, and most of the time, we get on pretty well here. But the people who are leading us and running our democracy, as much as whatever that really means, they work for us. That is a job. If you reduce it down to a bunch of people, this is the dog that I was talking about. Hello. This is the doctor who ran away when I was mad at her. And now I'm very loving of her when I can be, and try not to be mad, because I don't want her to run away again. Isn't that right, doctor? If we reduced it down to, well, for instance, with these dogs, I've got 2 dogs. They are my subjects. I am their ruler, if you want to look at it that way. But it is a job. I must look after them and do what is good for them. Why we are, in this day and age, we say that somebody born into that position is going to be in charge, and not somebody who is elected and voted by the people, that really confuses me. Now, you look at America and you go, well, wait a second. Or even Australia right here, right now. You look at the people who are voted in here and in these democracies, and you go, oh, well, that's not a perfect system either, is it? I don't know. But I look at the Queen and all these people who are distraught and upset, and we're getting a holiday because of it here in Australia. It's truly absurd, because what really did she have to go through? Did she go through anything really that terrible? She, who knows what she presided over and what she actually did? Did she actually have anything to do with Diana's death? Who knows? Did she earn the luxury that she lived in? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we ever know, really, because we don't know exactly what goes on behind closed doors. But because of the twist of fate of where she was born and who she was born to, she got to live where I assume she probably never had to worry about a meal. If she was having a bad day and couldn't, and what have you, she could get somebody else to clean her house or her things. Whereas my friend suffered through most of her life because of whatever reasons. That's a whole nother discussion. And so that's just an interesting thing that I've been thinking about and dwelling on lately, is that juxtaposition of the many, many millions of people, humans on this planet, who are cursed with consciousness, only to find most days to be painful, suffering experiences. The drug addicts, the rape victims, the abuse victims, the trauma that we all have, because I feel like we all have trauma from our youth. No matter whether it's big trauma or bad trauma, mummy didn't love us, or I was raped, or I didn't get what I wanted to, or my parents were bad, or I saw a scary movie, whatever. We've all got little bits of it that shape our personalities and our existence. And I'm sure the Queen had some of that. I'm sure she had some trauma. She would have been told from an early age, you are going to be Queen. You are going to be something, and you have to live up to that. And if you don't, then you're a failure. I was listening to the It's Always Sunny podcast just recently, and Megan, their producer, made reference to the fact that her husband went to school with Prince William, which is interesting. And at one point in class, they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And Prince William said, I want to be a policeman. And they all said, well, that's ridiculous. You're Prince William. You're going to be king. And so that's a trauma. That's a trauma that you have to experience as a person if you are in that position, absurd position, whereby because of who you were born to and where you were born, you then have to become something, whether you like it or not. Whether Prince William wants to be king or not, that is going to happen. Now, admittedly, he could abdicate. He could say, no, I don't want it. But he probably won't. He probably will become king. And based on some basic media that I've seen, he seems like he might be all right at it. But he went through trauma. We all got trauma. I'm sure the Queen had some trauma. Absolutely. But she died at 98, probably in relative comfort. She probably didn't die in a nursing home, having not seen her family for years, like a lot of old people do, or being abused by orderlies in the nursing home, which a lot of old people do. And she certainly didn't kill herself because the suffering got too much, not even halfway through her life, like my friend did. So on that depressing note, go out and hug a loved one, be nice to people, and remember, we're all just floating along, trying to experience this life. It's not a fight between people. Obviously it is sometimes, but we can do good. We can go bring positive stuff into the world and bring positive stuff into ourselves, and we can get over our trauma. We can break that trauma. And the grass is always greener, even when you go over to the green grass. So make your own grass green. Because it's a YouTube video, I have to say like and subscribe, of course, because that's the thing. Put something in the notes. Talk to me about something. Tell me a religious book I should get so that I can then read from that. Thank you. Bye-bye.